Hey, and welcome. So, we're often told to go out there and, change the world. But what if the most powerful way to actually do that is to first take a journey inward? Today, we're diving into a philosophy that's all about looking inside, asking the hard questions, and finding the truth that's already within you.
But that brings up a really critical question, doesn't it? Can a life spent looking inward really make the world a better place? Or is it, just kind of selfish? That's the exact tension we're going to unpack right now.
To get to an answer, let's start by looking at the role a thinker plays in society. It turns out this internal work can have a very real and very powerful external impact.
First, we got to redefine a key term from our source material, Njyana Yogi. Now, you might be picturing a hermit meditating alone on a mountaintop, right? But this philosophy sees it much, much more broadly. A jnana yogi is really just anyone who uses their intellect to deeply understand the world and figure out their place in it.
And this is where the whole concept just comes to life. A jnani isn't some distant mystic. It could be the tech inventor who's completely obsessed with creating a new device. It could be the doctor relentlessly searching for a cure, a composer trying to translate nature into music, or a scholar just digging for truth in ancient texts. It's a path of intense intellectual seeking.
And the source material argues this has huge, huge implications for an entire society. It draws this really stark contrast. Societies that value these thinkers, they tend to be successful, they're forward-looking. But the ones that rely on rigid interpretations of the past, well, they're described as being blighted by a curse, always looking backward and pretty much shutting down any new ideas.
Okay, so that's the external role of the thinker. But according to this philosophy, the real journey, the work that matters most, that begins inside.
So the source describes our minds forming in about 4 stages. We all start out as blank slates. Then, as we take in the world around us, our ego starts to form, that sense of being a separate me. And as that ego gets louder and louder, our true self, that deeper inner guide, kind of recedes into the background.
But here's the thing. That true self doesn't just disappear. It's described as our inner guide, our spirit state, that's always there. It's constantly whispering to us, just waiting for us to quiet down the noise of the ego and the outside world so we can finally hear what it has to say. And this, of course, leads us to one of the biggest questions of all. Why are we even here? What's the actual purpose of being human, with this incredibly complex intellect and this rich inner world?
And the answer, it seems, is twofold. First, there's the obvious purpose: contribute to society, make things better. We get that. But then there's a deeper purpose that often gets missed: the spiritual evolution of the individual. The idea is that our intellect wasn't just given to us to improve the world outside, but to actually master the world inside.
So if that's the goal, how do you actually walk the path? Well, this philosophy offers a really practical framework, and it's drawn from 3 simple verses of an ancient text called the Bhaja Govindam. The first principle is all about the goal. Look, we can find temporary joy in all sorts of things, right? But this verse says that true, lasting bliss is only found when our mind delights in Brahman, which you can think of as unity with the divine source of everything. That's the destination.
So how do you get there? The second principle gives us the method, and it works like a chain reaction. It says good company leads to non-attachment. Non-attachment then leads to freedom from delusion, and that freedom, that leads to liberation. It's a clear progression.
And the third principle, well, it's about humility. This verse is basically a plea. It's an admission that crossing this boundless ocean of existence is incredibly hard to do on your own. It shows that you need grace or a guide to help you cross that final threshold.
So let's just recap that really quick. The goal is unity. The method is detachment, which you get through good company. And the mindset is humility, knowing you're going to need a guide for the journey.
This brings us to our final and maybe the most critical part of this whole journey. It's a warning about what might be the single biggest obstacle on the path to truth.
So here's where, according to the source, things can really go wrong. The problem isn't the original divine revelation or the scripture itself. The trouble begins when the interpretations of those scriptures by other people start being treated as if they are divine themselves. And the consequences of that are huge. When interpretations become dogma, scholarship is no longer about seeking new truth. It's just about studying the past. Progress completely stalls, and the whole society just starts looking backwards instead of forwards.
Now, this is such a powerful point.
The source argues that sacred texts were never meant to be rigid rulebooks. Their true purpose is to be a map, a guide, to help you discover and read the divine message that is already embedded deep inside yourself.
And so we're left with this final, powerful idea that really sums it all up. Don't just be a passive believer in what someone else told you is the truth. Become an active seeker of your own.